since we were working on electronic networking too, it was inevitable that our path would cross. In July 1999, Valerie established the Roma virtual network, which not only pioneered Romani community presence on the internet, but in the following years firmly established it. Through several list servers and mailing lists, Valerie distributed information from and about Roma communities to the entire world. Famous were his remarks about the mystery of the number of Roma in Israel. We are very glad we also got to know him personally, his warmth, his sense of humor, and his solidarity. His contribution to Roma rights and the spread of information and advocacy, mainly through the internet, can hardly be gauged. It was huge. When he passed away, the ultra-right-wing electronic magazine News Observer Online wrote, "Jew behind gypsy propaganda dies." Valerie would have considered that to be a proud epitaph, and so do we. Valerie Novoselsky, Roma, Ukrainian, Jew, Israeli, human. In this increasingly tribal world, and a world that's more and more inward looking, his very existence and his work taught us how to do things and how things could be better and different. One day it all became too much for him, and he just left us. He sleeps now forever in the land where all partisans go. His memory a blessing. This conference is dedicated to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very moving dedication. Could we turn the music off? Thank you. My name is Gwendolyn Albert, and I'm here on behalf of Romea to welcome you all to this conference today. Mr. Zdeněk Ryšavý is the executive director of Romea and has been since 2003. He will welcome you all, and he would like to speak in Czech. So, those of you who do not yet have headphones, if you do not understand Czech, please make sure you have them. Does everybody have headphones who needs them? Excellent. All right, without further ado, Mr. Ryšavý.
Dobré dopoledne, dámy a pánové. Dovolte mi, abych vás přivítal jménem organizace Romea zde v Praze na výroční konferenci Mezinárodní sítě INACH. Vítám vás v České republice, v zemi, kde byl dlouhou dobu prezidentem Václav Havel, jeden z největších bojovníků za lidská práva, jeden z největších bojovníků proti šíření nenávisti a proti šíření lží. Jeho heslo "Pravda a láska musí zvítězit nad lží a nenávistí" je však dnes v České republice zesměšňováno. Lidé jako já nebo vy jsou posměšně nazýváni pravdoláskaři nebo sluníčkáři. Prezidentem je člověk, který lživě tvrdí, že 90% Romů v České republice nepracuje a že sfackování Romů, kteří nepracují, je velmi humánní metoda, která se zpravidla osvědčuje. Místopředsedou Poslanecké sněmovny je pak člověk, který otevřeně zlehčuje a popírá utrpení Romů v koncentračním táboře v Letech u Písku. A takto bych mohl pokračovat. Výroky politiků se pak s patřičnými komentáři šíří internetem. A jak tedy na takové lži a šíření nenávistí vůči Romům v online prostředí reagovat? Romea se pravidelně proti takovým výrokům ohrazuje. Nabízí fakta a důkazy. Je to ta správná reakce? A dokážeme ji dostat ke stejnému množství lidí, jako se dostaly původní lživé a nenávistné projevy a výroky? Díky zpravodajskému serveru Romea.cz se nám daří posouvat do velkých médií i reakce samotných Romů. Příkladem může být odpověď prezidentu Zemanovi na jeho nehorázné výroky o nepracujících Romech, kdy Romové doslova zaplavili Facebook svými fotkami, jak pracují v nejrůznějších profesích. I díky Romea.cz se tato aktivita dostala do hlavních zpravodajských relací v zemi, ale i do zahraničních agentur. Je tohle ta správná reakce? Romea společně s organizací In Justitia a agenturou Publicis v září spustila kampaň zaměřenou na svědky nenávistných útoků. Snažili jsme se poskytnout návod, jak v některých konkrétních situacích může okolí reagovat, jak poskytnout pomoc napadené osobě, a to jak v reálném prostředí, tak i v online prostoru. Je tohle ta správná cesta? Paradoxně hned po zveřejnění toho spotu se terčem nenávistných komentářů stal právě herec Hynek Čermák, který v klipu vystupuje. A důvod byl ten, že spot natočil společně s organizací Romea, tedy organizací zabývající se romskou tematikou. A takové útoky nejsou ojedinělé. Samotné organizaci Romea bylo například vyhrožováno vypálení. Když jsme kvůli tomu podali trestní oznámení, bylo nám řečeno, že se nejedná o trestný čin. Stejně jako v dalších případech, kdy pisatelé například psali o stahování romských dětí z kůže. Státní zástupkyně to označila jako jakési internetové glosátorství. Jsem rád, že nejvyšší státní zástupce Pavel Zeman na nedávné konferenci Nenávist na internetu jasně uvedl, že pisatelé nenávistných příspěvků by měli vědět, že jsou dohledatelní a mohou nést odpovědnost. Zmínil také, že nejčastějším terčem předsudečné nenávisti na českém internetu jsou stále Romové. A proto si myslím, že téma výroční konference INACH bylo zvoleno velmi dobře. Věřím, že dnes budeme se velmi konkrétně bavit o možných postupech boje proti anticiganismu na internetu. Věřím, že si vzájemně vyměníme zkušenosti a najdeme ty nejefektivnější postupy a reakce na nenávistné útoky. Díky za pozornost.
If you want. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. So I'm Philip Schmidt. I'm the chair of INACH. Sorry I was not here yesterday night for the dinner. I heard that it was very good. So next time, and maybe we would have a very good lunch today. So I'm really happy to be here today. It's a very important conference, and indeed, as Zdenek already indicated, it's very important to have this topic. Finally, it's not so often that human rights organizations take care of this subject, which is particular in many matters. So I would like first to thank Zdenek, Gwen, and all your team at Romea for this conference, for the organization, Salma, the university, all the people at the university who had made it, and of course our usual partners who help us during the year and especially for the conference, the European Union and the German Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you want all the name, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth, and also the Federal Agency for Civil Education, the BPB. Of course, thank you also to the staff and all the people in Amsterdam at the headquarters of INACH, Ron, Suzette, always involved, Charlotte, Thomas, everybody. And finally, but most important, maybe, thanks to all of you to be here, it's important, we need you to go forward in this fight. So this fight, it's not new for INACH. INACH has worked for many years in partnership with civil society organizations on this issue of online anti-Gypsyism. A report has been recently published by many organization members of the INACH in the consortium project, the SCAN consortium, and the topic is anti-Gypsyism on the internet. I think it's on the table at the end of the room. If not, you can find it on the internet, on the blog of the SCAN consortium. So the purpose of this conference is, of course, mainly, but at least first, to increase people awareness about the manifestation and the level of online anti-Gypsyism hate. We need to increase this awareness because in Western Europe, it's not yet a topic which is on the agenda of the people who can make things moving forward. Sinti and Romani people have been living in Europe for more than 6 centuries. They have different traditions, religions, and legal status. However, the anti-Gypsy rhetoric, discrimination, violence, political persecution has been long ingrained in most European countries, and similarly, in fact. Traditional stereotypes and hateful speech, reflecting a deep lack of understanding, remain in Europe. We know, of course, better in Europe, even if it's not only in Europe, widespread. Anti-Gypsyism is fed by public discourse, which tends to see these communities as culturally different and representing a threat. And that's very specific. Anti-Gypsyism is not only the result of the action of the far right and the far right extremist actors, but finally, it's widely accepted in the general public and disseminated by regular political parties, individual politicians, and the media. The consequences are very straightforward and terrible. Sinti and Roma are Europe's most marginalized minority. While anti-Gypsyism is still being perpetuated and institutionalized in the offline world, nowadays, again, most of the anti-Gypsist rhetoric takes place online. And we will study that in the workshop, but of course it has effect in real life. Very recently, in my home country, in France, in March 2019, false kidnapping rumors by Roma people have been disseminated on social media, including Snapchat, Facebook, and have led to violent attacks and punitive expeditions against Roma people in Parisian suburbs. And the trial is now in Paris going on. The impact of hateful discussions on silent bystanders is gaining more and more importance. The most common narratives of online anti-Gypsists are always the same: criminalization, welfare chauvinism, and dehumanization. So we can start with a common definition, and INACH is in line with the working definition of anti-Gypsyism proposed by the Alliance Against Anti-Gypsyism. You have it in the book, which in the document, which is again in the back of the room. I'm not going to read it to you to go quicker. So how can we combat this hate speech phenomena? How fighting online hate speech will help curb real-life anti-Gypsy acts? The existing cooperation between Romani representatives, civil society organizations, internet service providers, and public authorities need to be strengthened, obviously. Media should take care, and social media, to provide unbiased report on Sinti and Romani people, as well as other marginalized minorities. Politician responsibilities must be involved each time anti-gypsy statements have been pronounced. And finally, of course, I would like to remind you how important this conference is today. We would like throughout this day to find the answer to these questions, and your participation to this conference is as important as your role every day as an actor of a democratic development and respectful online space. Thank you, and have a very good conference.
I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Suzette Bronkhorst. I'm the Secretary General of INACH. We swiftly move on to our next part of the program, which is a keynote speech by Gabriela Abranova. She's the director of the European Roma Grassroots Organizations Network, ERGO for short. And after her, there will be a presentation of the Roma Civil Monitor, and that is done by Jelena Jovanovic, the Policy and Research Coordinator from ERGO.
Hello, can I use this one? Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriela Hrabaňová. I'm coming actually from this country, from the Czech Republic, though I will be speaking in English because I see that the audience here is much more English audience than my Czech fellows here. I'm coming from the ERGO Network. ERGO Network, it's a European Roma Grassroots Organization Network, which is based in Brussels, and we are very glad to be invited for this organization, because me personally, I work with Suzette and Roland and being involved in the activities for many years, but it's somehow at this very moment the things are also taking shape in a concrete cooperation. And having anti-Gypsyism on a main topic of the annual conference is also a great pleasure for us to actually get inside the work of an organization that's fighting hate speech online, and it's the main focus. Yeah, so coming from the ERGO Network, so we are a Brussels-based organization. We are kind of bringing the Roma reality to the European institutions and to those who actually can affect the policies which are being implemented on the member states. I would like to bring here sort of a setting the scene for the anti-Gypsyism, to go into the what is it exactly, why we are working on this topic, and what it's entitled. We already heard a lot in the welcoming notes, though before going into one of the manifestations, which is the online hate speech, it's very important to understand the bigger context in which we are operating. Anti-Gypsyism today, it's present everywhere. I mean, we already heard the example from the Czech Republic, from France as well. In the recent EU barometer, the respondents consider discrimination for being Roma is the most widespread. It's only after being followed with those who are from the other color or gender or LGBTI. So practically, we see that being Roma in Europe today, it's actually kind of being the most discriminated at this very moment. And of course, the real life, it's being reflected in the online sphere as well. We also see that 80% of Roma are at the risk of poverty compared with the average of 17% for the majority of society. And here in Czech Republic, we also have about 30% of Romani children being actually kept in segregated schools, while the majority of society in any country in the world, it's maximum 3% if there are children of any needs, any special needs. So we see that something is wrong. Something is actually very fundamentally wrong, that Roma are not being able to enjoy practically the benefits, the kind of fulfilled life in the mainstream society. That's why we think that being able to name, to kind of focus on anti-Gypsum as a specific form of racism, to name that this phenomena actually has kind of coming from somewhere, that those who are, and I think this is very interesting, that anti-Gypsism is actually being in a people's head. So it's the imagination about the gypsies. So very often those stereotypes or those perceptions that people are having towards the Romani people and Sinti people and other groups of Roma, which are actually here in Europe and also in the world, are very often just the imagination. And interestingly, also anti-Gypsism, it's not only about what is being said, but also what is being done or not being done. Very often we have those examples of mayor in the local town, which actually, for being re-elected, he would not do any activity for favoring or kind of narrowing the situation of Romani people. So that's until today, we have excluded Romani localities with no access to water, with no roads, with actually any access to the basic services, just because although there are finances, there are possibilities, it's just because if somebody would actually act, would be seen as those who's favoring Roma and might actually harm his own reputation and even hitchhiked a possible re-election or any other future career. We see that because this anti-Gypsism is really kind of coming from all kind of sphere, that we had a need of bringing a reference paper. Some of them actually were referred to, are distributed, so it's really a document which goes in depth in analyzing and explaining what is anti-Gypsism. You can find it on antigypsism.eu. You can download it here, and few copies might be available here as well. As was already mentioned, this reference paper was produced by the Alliance Against Anti-Gypsism. One of the main actors at the very beginning were the Central Council for the German Sinti and Roma, ENAR, European Network Against Racism, and ERGO Network. Today we are also joined with ERRC, the European Roma Rights Center, which is here. We work very closely with OSEPI, with REF, and with other organizations, practically kind of gathering the minds and the power of the organizations to advance the work, the policy work on anti-Gypsism. This reference paper was also created not just by this organization, but we also had a consultation process, and more than 100 organizations joined and supported the creation of this process, of the paper. At this very moment, the reference papers are being translated in the national languages. So there are already some translations available. So I can also encourage you to actually, soon we will upload them on the website, on the antigypsism.eu. And you can also use it for your work. So if some of the INACH members which are here might actually kind of use it as a reference for your work to kind of explore deeper the work that has been done by the Romani organization in this field. Just for a record, anti-Gypsism, it's not a new term. It's being, the kind of recognition is being gradual. So on the first sort of bigger recognition came in 2005 in European Parliament resolution on anti-Gypsism. Then we had ECRI recommendation from 2011, which go much more in depth and looking on the different field, like employment, education, housing, and exploring the anti-Gypsism there. We also have European Commission working with this term recently quite often. So practically it's being mentioned and it's being referred to in the European Commission communications and in their work, also in the Council recommendation of 2013. I think it's kind of a first Council conclusions. It was the EBSCO conclusion which were mentioning the work. If you also know the work of the previous Parliament, we had a champion on anti-Gypsyism there, which was Soraya Post. It was a Roma women activist from Sweden. She was actually advancing the work on anti-Gypsyism on a big scale. She produced several reports and several work in her, also as a part of her work in the Fundamental Rights Committee, Libe Committee, and one of her own initiative report was calling fundamental rights aspects in Roma integration in the EU, fighting anti-Gypsyism. And as well, she advanced work on a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which I think that's something that we are at this very moment kind of on to take up, because we see that very often those horrors that actually happen to Roma in all the countries are not being acknowledged. Here in Czech Republic, we talk about the victims of Romani Holocaust. I was just speaking with Čeněk Růžička here that practically the redress of the victims, was like financially never happened. We have the women that were sterilized. We still don't have government to take a firm stand. Though I understood it's on the positive way, but we still have to push much more for the redress of the victims, and at this very moment, this is just here in Czech Republic, but it's happening, and the horrors happen in most of the countries of the European Union and also beyond, and we have to kind of find a way. So the proposal of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission might be something that might help. In Sweden, there was already a quite advanced work, so Sweden produced a white paper. They also had a commission on anti-Gypsyism, and the acknowledgement was there. So if we need actually to find analysis to put this work further across, also going beyond the Roma organization, so I think that might be something that we need to take up by all. Roma Civic Monitoring, it's a special report mechanism coming from from every single EU country. We will have my colleague Jelena. She will explain a little bit more in a moment. So when we think of anti-Gypsyism, I think important again, it's not a minority issue. So this is we have to kind of make it to shift the phenomena and not to have it as a problem of the Roma, but address the majority of society in this case. Very often it's not because anti-Gypsyism, it's not here because Roma are poor, because they live in the bad condition, because even if we have Roma living in better condition, the anti-Gypsyism is not changing. We also have to address the effects of discriminatory treatment, but it will not eradicate the cause. And I think it was also said that this is actually one of the forms of racism. This is has the highest social acceptance. Practically from the left to right, it's being totally normal. The president of the Czech Republic saying that 90% of Roma don't work and we should slap them to get to work. I mean, this is ridiculous, and it's really like nobody standing up against it. Practically, that politicians and any other public figure are having these attitudes. The working definition that was mentioned is something that we really think that has to be going forward. We see that anti-Gypsyism is being used. It's being used on those by those different institutions, by the different organizations, but even sometimes within the institution, the understanding it's not fully there. I was just recently meeting a different department. Usually we work with the DG Justice. So it's the sort of the main DG, which is responsible for Roma in Brussels. So I met with DG Home, they have the project on remembrance. part of the citizenship initiative. Most of you might know this project. They're also having anti-Gypsyism in their call. So practically you can apply to address the anti-Gypsyism when it comes to remembrance. But as interestingly, I said, like, but how do you understand the anti-Gypsyism? Do you actually, do you work with the other units and with the civil society to kind of have the full understanding? So we're still lacking this. So I think there's sort of a common push for the working definition. It's also one way forward to know that we are staying on one page. So I'm not going to read it. Often, we still, even until today, we are receiving questions why anti-Gypsyism. Actually, we use this anti-Gypsyism also like one word together that we believe, because it's a construct, it doesn't exist. So it's something that's actually kind of going beyond the Roma. And also because there is a variety of Romani people, Roma, Sinti, Manush, Kale, Egyptians, Ashkali. So we have so many different groups of Roma. So also finding one term, it's quite problematic. And because we are fighting the imagination, so we are not fighting practically the kind of how the Roma are being treated. So that's sort of a common term that we are finding now. Although you can still find also anti-Roma racism or Romaphobia as being used by some organization, and I think this is very okay as well. But in the same time, we just sort of, when we needed the explanation, I think this was actually the best we could find. Importantly, anti-Gypsyism is historically rooted. I was just recently visiting a castle in Belgium, where I live now, and very often thinking of how now we see the hate speech online on our walls on Facebook. There was this huge tapestry, all hanged on the wall in the castle, called Gypsy Cycle. It was just about Roma stealing, Roma selling their children. It was a beautiful tapestry, 18th century tapestry, a huge one. And I was hanging there on the wall, just displaying the biggest stereotypes and the perceptions on Roma. Even the guide recorded on the phone. We were having this sort of automatic guide walking with us. Was kind of going with this, saying like, this is how we see the gypsies, and it's like, yeah, oh my God. So the walls are still there. They didn't change practically, like from those pictures that, there was always an expression of how to portray the gypsies as those who would be unacceptable for the rest of the society. It's a sort of an essentialist ideology. It also kind of brings Roma into certain hierarchy. So it's a sort of a lower class citizens, and it comes from attitudes but also the social practice. It has a systematic nature. We are finding the institutional anti-Gypsyism on many different places. You can find it in resolutions on the local level, or just kind of not hiring Romani people for certain positions and so. And it also has been internalized. So many Roma themselves, they actually are building the blocks inside them, because being perceived for so many centuries, kind of it's hard to step up of this vicious circle. It goes from negative to positive. I think it's also important to see that if there is a stereotype, positive stereotype is still a stereotype. It can be malevolent and benevolent. It can be also implicit and explicit in its intent. It was also said it goes from right to mainstream and to left. So actually, anti-Gypsyism has no political affiliation. It goes across, and it can be moral. It can be functional, economic, and let me see how much time I still have. I'm okay. And it goes from denial to over-acceptance. So sometimes even like over-acceptance, it's sort of can be a dimension. So when we talk about the ways forward, I was already mentioning it here, and I think this conference is a great example of that building the alliances It's sort of the most important step we have to do at this very moment. And we have to kind of build the capacity of civil society, but not only on Roma civil society, to respond to anti-Gypsyism. And especially if we see how much content we are having now online and how much also your expertise it's in this field. So would this alliance that we can build actually help to fight anti-Gypsyism? We also have to strengthen the links to academia and knowledge production to collect the evidence and capture the manufactured character of anti-Gypsyism. This is a one way, but also only the reporting of online hate speech, it will also help us a lot. I was just reading the article of Gwen and Selma kind of saying that actually now the response, it's higher, but we still have to have much more reporting going on. We still have to have people who would actually be able to understand what anti-Gypsyism actually is and then to report on it. And we have to establish structures for effective monitoring as well. When we think of how to fight the anti-Gypsyism, that actually, what is the way forward at this very moment? So we made a specific recommendation. I have them here. So we made a policy paper. We developed measures to combat anti-Gypsyism after 2020. Sort of a guidance for European and national institutions, because at this very moment we are on this sort of a crossroad when one of the period of a policy period is finishing and the post-2020 it's being built. So it's sort of the moment when we are analyzing and when we are evaluating what actually worked. And we are actually seeing that without firmly addressing anti-Gypsyism, both as a specific chapter, but also horizontally across the old priorities, we would not achieve any change. So there is a very big move, especially among the Romani organization, at this very moment to make sure that anti-Gypsyism is being addressed in the next 2020 period, 2020 to 27, and that those specific measures that we develop and are also available at this very moment, it's on the Ergo website. Actually, it's still, I think it's not on anti-Gypsyism website yet, but our organization can also provide you. Maybe we can also share with the organizers to be shared later with you, practically to engage more on making sure that these concrete and specific measures are in place, and they will be also accompanied with indicators and resources to actually implement those policies. So on the one hand, our work is happening on the very EU level when we are making sure that those institutions are taking it up and bringing the guideline to the member states, but at the same time without the civil society and kind of amplifying the voice and making sure the pressures it's on the government, the change will not happen. So it's also about kind of how to translate these concrete measures to the national level. Also, how to make them much more kind of national and local sensitive. And for this, we also need to kind of engage much more with the civil society. And I think that I was just hearing also yesterday that actually the member of INACH in Germany very closely working with the Central Council for Sinti and Roma and practically finding the way how to make this particular work together. So we can also maybe encourage that some of the other alliances are happening and those particular fields that we can strengthen our expertise are being pushed forward. So though it was quite technical and on anti-Gypsyism, I really thank you for being able to bring this message here. If you need more information, you can always consult us. And I also know that during the day we will have more chances to explore and to go in details of this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. And you can admire her knowledge again in workshop 2 later on in the day. And now we I have to put my glasses on. I can't tell. Jelena Jovanovic also from ERGO. She's the Policy and Research Coordinator, and she will present the Roma Civil Monitor, after which, pay attention, you can ask questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, organizers, for inviting me. I'm very proud to represent ERGO here, and also someone who is working on a Roma Civil Monitor project. So in the next 10 minutes or so, I will tell you a little bit more about the Roma Civil Monitor project, and we will focus specifically on the results of the project, including hate speech and including online hate speech. So let me tell you about the project a little bit at the beginning. So Roma Civil Monitor project that Gabriela mentioned before is a pilot project initiated by the European Parliament. And this project is managed by the European Commission, DG Justice. And let's say the main actor is coordinator of the project. And this is the Center for Policy Studies from the Central European University from Budapest. Luckily, if I miss some important information, we have colleagues also from the university here who are coordinating the project, so they can help me to provide more information. Unfortunately, also we don't have enough information, so for example, when it comes to methodology that is actually very sophisticated and important part, I think we might speak later about this, because now I think content is more important. ERGO Network is one of the partners on the project, together with Fundación Secretariado Gitano, European Roma Rights Center, and Roma Education Fund. Luckily, almost all the partners are here, so good to see you here. But the most important actually actors, the most important partners are those people who are reporting. And those people are civil society in almost all the from almost all the EU countries, excluding Malta, because they say there are no Roma there.
Is that true, or is that your perception?
Yeah, well, people say in Malta there are not communities, so there are not many. There are probably Roma, but not many visible, and or what also is often excused, hard to reach. Hard to reach people. So there are around 90 NGOs and also experts who are working on this project. Main aims of the project are to make governments accountable when it comes to implementation of the national Roma integration strategies and capacity building of Roma civil society. And this project is ongoing. Now is the third year, and we started working in 2017. But what is it actually? Actually, this is about mostly about civil society reporting on the implementation of the national Roma integration strategies, or so-called policy set of policy measures. On purpose put this so-called because often the set of policy measures are unfortunately not really what they are supposed to be. So targeted measures to address the problems of Roma people. In the project, civil society is focusing on reporting on state responses to different problems. It's not about describing the situation, or at least this is not the main it's not the main focus. It's not, that's not the point of the project. The point of the project is to see what governments and what authorities are doing in this regard. In 2017, so first year of the project, civil society reported on governance, anti-discrimination, combating anti-Gypsyism, and only some countries with large Roma communities, they reported also impact of mainstream education policies. Then, next year, civil society reported about education, employment, health, and housing. And now, they are starting reporting about the issues that they themselves find relevant in their own context, which I think is really great, because finally the topics are not imposed either by the Commission or by the coordinator of the project and main partners. Why we think that this project is important? There are many reasons, but mostly it is because governments are reporting to the European Commission about the implementation of the national Roma integration strategies. However, these reports are often not public, so we don't know actually what they are saying to the Commission about their commitments and their performance when it comes to combating Roma exclusion. That is one reason, and maybe the most important. Then, government information can be enriched or challenged by the civil society actors who are reporting, and especially by those people who are working on the grassroots level. And then, maybe the most important in the current moment is that the European Commission should have more knowledge to make well-informed policies. Gabriela mentioned the post-2020 process, so the Commission is now making the new policy for Roma, and this project is very helpful, basically in providing more knowledge to the Commission and to those actors who are making policies at the EU level. Then, I mean, there are more reasons, like, for example, even it is very helpful for us, Roma organization in Brussels, to learn what is happening in the grassroots level. I mean, of course, we know to some extent because we are working with many civil society actors, but here there are 90 people involved, so it is kind of broadening our knowledge and also specifying our knowledge when it comes to certain issues. There are many, many identified gaps that are actually some of the results of the project. But I will focus on specific topics on combating anti-Gypsyism, because we as Ergo, we were, this was our main role, to help civil society organizations actually and experts to report specifically on combating anti-Gypsyism in this project. And one of the main results is basically that racism and sometimes, but almost never, anti-Gypsyism is a subject of state policies, but mostly it's general about racism that is also, as we know, in the national legislation. So EU legislation and policies are transposed when it comes to national level. However, we know that implementation is very problematic, even though it is very different when it comes to national contexts. Most important legislations of the EU in this regard are Race Equality Directive and Framework Decision to combat all forms of racism and xenophobia, I think that's the name. And these legislations are transposed, but basically still the police, judges, prosecutors, and also all the other important actors do not consider, for example, hate crime towards Roma as such. So what it means in practical terms, it means, for example, that I will give an example of Bulgaria. Sometimes when a hate crime against Roma happens, the authorities, they don't define it as hate crime, but they define it as hooliganism. That means because, and that means that also the perpetrators will get a different punishment. So that's very problematic, and this is not only the case of Bulgaria. Then we have a lot of problems across EU when it comes to institutional settings. So it's not only about institutional structures, but also about their capacities. We always talk about capacities of the civil society, but we rarely talk about capacities of the actual institutions who are supposed to work on it, and their performance. And then there is a lack of committed resources, even when it comes to, for example, equality bodies that are one of the main actors in the countries. they often do not have enough resources. They are often not independent, that they are supposed to be independent. So this is also what I would like to challenge this idea that one of the main problems is that Roma are not informed, or that there is a, but it's not only about Roma not being informed, it's about Roma not trusting the institutions with a reason. So, and it's not only about poor Roma, and this is what I really liked what Gabriela said, and I remember my own experience. I mean, I'm not coming from a poor family, but when I experienced quite a harsh discrimination from the teacher in elementary school, my parents did not do anything about it, even though it was quite bad. And I did not remember even if I complained to my parents about this. And I asked my mom maybe 2 years ago if she knew about this. And she said, of course, yes, you told me about this. And I was so angry, and I said, but why you didn't react? because it was, I was so sad. Mm-hmm. And she said, because I believe that you would be even, I would put you in even worse situation.
You?
Yeah, I mean, and this is what I want to say. It's not only about, it's also about, it's across, it doesn't, this mistrust, it doesn't see the class.
It has little to do with Romani people. It has to do with the non-Romanis. It's their problem.
Yes, this is the thing. What Gabriela said, anti-Gypsyism is not a problem of Roma, it's a problem of racist. So, and then when it comes to hate speech also, and other manifestations of anti-Gypsyism, such as hate crime, discrimination in education, employment, health, housing, and so on, we do not have a systematic monitoring. And also the problem is that mostly only NGOs are reporting on hate crime and hate speech. Government authorities are not involved. Generally, of course, in some countries it is different, but in very few countries authorities are actually reacting. And I was talking with a colleague from Fundación Secretariado Gitano, and I remembered in 2017 when the civil society was reporting in the Roma Civil Monitor project, they were saying that institution that is responsible for combating anti-Gypsyism is actually not functioning. And now I think we can talk later with colleagues from FSG, but the situation is changing. But at that point, the civil society did not even have what to report about. It's only about some project. And this is a general situation, that there are no initiatives, there are no measures. The initiatives only come from civil society, from human rights organizations. And then another problem is that even most of these initiatives, we don't know the impact. There are no evaluations of the initiatives when it comes to combating hate speech. I am very happy that Mr. Schmidt mentioned the example of France. For example, France reported 0 initiatives in the country to combat online hate speech. But we heard what happened in France in March this year, and how online hate speech actually caused the violent attacks towards Roma in France. There are some countries that reported quite extensively, and there is some involvement of authorities, like for example in Slovakia, and very few in Bulgaria. For example, in Czech Republic, because this is, I guess, more interesting in this for you, civil society reported on a project that was funded by Norway grants, and it was implemented by the Department of the Agency for Social Inclusion, called Hate-Free Culture. Still, based on the report and the content on the report, people cannot really learn about the impact, neither about the methodology of this project. There are many recommendations. I would really suggest that you read reports, not only synthesis reports, because they're very compact, or there's not much information. There are more like most important conclusions, but if you go to the individual reports they are all online, you will find specific information about the countries. And only if you Google Roma Civil Monitor, you will find these reports online on the website. There are many recommendations, but I just choose few because unfortunately we don't have more time, and also, as I said, we can read more on the website in the reports. And their recommendations are mostly about having recognized anti-Gypsyism in the policies and legislations, like including national Roma integration strategies, but also relevant mainstream policies such as national action plans against racism and so on. Then specific measures to combat anti-Gypsyism online should be developed in each country, because basically the problem is everywhere. To different extent, but it is everywhere, and there should be some measurable indicators so actually we can understand the impact of these measures. And then civil society also asks for public entities the responsibility to set up a monitoring system of anti-Roma hate speech online and to report every year about this situation, because as I said, mostly only Roma civil society, not only Roma, but only civil society is reporting about this. And now I would like to, because we have to understand that the results, that the timing is, it is still relevant, but there might be some developments after 2017, because the civil society reported in 2017. There are some developments. And what I think is most very interesting for us is this code of conduct of the European Commission to combat illegal hate speech online. And some of you are involved in reporting to the Commission about the hate speech online. Like, for example, we learned that in Czech Republic, in Justicia, and recently Romea is involved, and this actually brings a lot of new data. And interestingly, now in February 2019, there was fourth report of the Commission, and for the first time there is anti-Gypsyism, as you can see, as one of the categories. So the Commission started reporting specifically also on anti-Gypsyism, and also thanks to the advocacy of the Fundación Secretariado Gitano, and also that we can ask our colleague what they did on the national level, a very similar process of advocating towards the national authorities to report specifically on anti-Gypsyism when it comes to online hate speech towards Roma. So I am really curious to find out, and I hope that maybe during the workshop we will have time to talk about the impact about this Commission initiative, because I think it is important, very important, but they also themselves, they said that the methodology can be a little bit problematic, because not everybody who is reporting to them is actually having a data on anti-Gypsyism. And as we can see, like, it is the fourth, I think the fourth, the highest, among the highest percentages when it comes to groups. So it is anti-Muslim hatred, sexual orientation, and xenophobia, including anti-migrant hatred, together with anti-Gypsyism among the first four most frequent forms. So then also there are like different reports where we can learn about some recommendations also of the civil society, how to combat hate speech, including online. Gabriela mentioned also this policy paper where we developed measures to combat anti-Gypsyism, and there is this one, I mean, don't read it, it's a lot of text, but I just wanted to give you an example. And there is one recommendation that is relevant for this topic. And we suggested some measures both for the EU institutions and for the more for the national governments. I would also like to say because I also got inspired by my colleague's presentation, that in Belgium she was giving this example of the wall, but I think I have my maybe even worse example. In Belgium, my current home country, I went to the Holocaust Museum, and they have an explanation about Roma and Sinti, and it's very racist. Holocaust Museum, so this is where we still are, and there is no difference between Eastern Europe, Western Europe.
With the exception of the Netherlands,
Okay.
where always with the Holocaust remembrance, the Roma and Sinti are included, because it's a shared history of Jews and Roma and Sinti and all the people.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm very happy if you have any question.
Yes. So, Gwen will take a microphone, and then if you raise your hand, she will come to you. There we have Panayota from the Greek Helsinki Monitor.
Thank you. Just a quick question, because I went to your site again, and it does not seem to be the national report on Greece.
Oh, Greece is, yeah.
There is no link highlight there. All other reports are there. So, just for information, what happened?
Only Greece is missing. True. Greece is missing because there were a lot of back and forth when it comes to the report itself. It hasn't been approved yet. There are a lot of problems there. But I suggest that you talk to my colleague Marek Hojsik about this, because he can give you more information as a coordinator.
Yeah. Anybody else? Don't be shy. We only bite on Sundays. Today is what, Wednesday? So you're in no danger of getting bitten.
But
what is the most positive country, as far as you are concerned, on Roma issues?
What is that?
Which country is doing the best?
That's a little bit difficult question, but
is there a country doing better than others?
But for example, I think Germany is doing quite good. They have a lot of initiatives, and not very good, but quite good. But they have a lot of issues, but they also are actually recognized, and it's very visible, the support, even financial support of the state for the measures to combat anti-Gypsyism specifically. So that's something quite big, that at least what we learned from our partners from Germany. And then also in the Roma Civil Monitor, they were reporting, they were saying that there is a specific monitoring system that started in 2017 only, when it comes to recording a hate speech online, but at that time it wasn't functioning yet properly, because it was, well, because there might be because it was established, quite late, but now after 2 years, I don't know what is happening, but we can talk to our colleagues from Documentation Center, Roxana, she can tell you more about Germany. But they also have a lot of measures to combat anti-Gypsyism. I mean, a lot compared to other countries is a lot. By the authorities, that is
it's something.
That is something that we didn't got used to. Yeah, so I think it's a good news.
Yes.
Yes. Hello, my name is Salma Muhic, Faculty of Humanities, Charles University. I wanted to comment and ask something. First of all, for both of you, I think it's really important that you stressed that this requirement that people are poor or excluded or live in social, as we call them euphemistically in the Czech Republic, socially excluded localities and stuff like that. They are often the subject of reports, they are often subject of the policies, the targets and stuff like that. But actually, there are majority of Roma people actually do live these lives that racists accuse them of not doing enough, and they are exposed to racism as well. And it's very humiliating that you have to be, poor or deprived in order to somehow be in the focus of interest of anti-racist policies or all these campaigns. So my question is, however, how to break out of this circle? Because it's very difficult even here in the Czech Republic, although we know that obviously there are Roma people who live this kind of life that is so-called integrated, but they are not respected either. So, how to put this into focus throughout some initiatives or policies or whatever.
Please solve the problem of the world.
Solve this problem now, if possible.
No, thank you very much for the question. I mean, of course, it is the most important, actually. How do we solve the problem? But I mean, we think that it is important that we work on every level, and that we are in Brussels not because we are to be close, with a reason to be close with the Commission, but because we want to bring the grassroots problems there. So I think, that's important bridge, but then, we know that we are doing our best to make the policies there so they can be used at the national level, but then we know that the implementation of the national level policies again face different issues and much more issues, because it is supposed to help people. But I think this is very difficult. One of the things that Gabriela was saying, it is alliances, because by now a lot of Roma organizations, it is pity that Gabi is not here. Maybe you can come and help me. But the thing is that that we do not have enough initiatives where we actually engage with other groups. So I think that we have to make alliances, because especially in these countries where the far right is very strong and where the anti-Gypsy narratives are on the increase.
Well, I tell you, you don't need to have Roma, Jews, black people living in an area to have racism against them.
That's also true. In Malta, that's the case.
It's a different thing. And I think the solution is, this is the wall, this is your head, bang your head in the wall until the wall gives way. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's the only way to go.
But let me tell me just one concrete thing. Yeah. Like I was mentioning this situation in Bulgaria. So we have to work together with authorities for anti-Gypsyism to be recognized by their own institutions, who are supposed to identify the crime as hate crime. And then if we make the national actors to identify this, then they have to treat it as such, because they do have a national legislation. They just avoid treating situations like acts of anti-Gypsyism within this legislation. So I think that's maybe one of the concrete suggestions that we have to work on.
Gabriela and then Anastasia.
Yeah. Actually, Jelena just said it now. I think that the work on anti-Gypsyism, it's bringing us to the kind of elevating just from those kind of social policies. We have to have the social policies to work for everybody, and I think this is important. It should not be just for Roma. But the anti-Gypsyism perspective are kind of going beyond this. Practically, we don't target just those people who are kind of the regular targets, but we target those who are facing the racism, which is all Roma. And I think this is why it's still taking time, and that's why we are pushing for the post-2020 to have anti-Gypsyism as a core focus. So to also kind of making sure that this would be the case, and and then plus it's not only Roma, but it's the majority of society who actually should be educated first on kind of making the space for Roma to feel good and accepted part of the society. So I think that practically with the whole work, the advocacy work that we did in the last 10, 15 years on anti-gypsyism, we are kind of shifting us there. We also see that those social policies, they didn't work. I think that it's actually more Roma being excluded than actually were in those 15, 20 years ago, so that we don't have any better numbers when it comes to just kind of assessing those social kind of working on the social problems. So then we actually think that the answer is the rest to kind of fight the racism on the first place.
Exactly. Let's make racist people in need, because they have a need also in different way.
I'm sorry to take the floor, but my name is Anastasia Crickley. But I won't be here during the afternoon, unfortunately, and I want to go back, first of all, to congratulate the organizers. I think this is a really important event, and I'm very glad to see some old friends from a long time ago and also some new friends here. I want to say, Suzette, you asked about which country is the best. Now, I have just completed a term as chair of the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racism. I'm sorry, but no country is the best. And I think we have got to say that honestly, and that includes Germany, whom I have reviewed at least twice during my term at the UN. No country is the best. The significance of denial of anti-Roma, anti-traveller, anti-Sinti racism, of anti-Gypsyism is widespread throughout all of the countries that have been reviewed. And I think we really need to start from that perspective and to acknowledge that the really important work that has been done in the past decade to put anti-Gypsyism on the agenda, it's on the page, but it's not off the page, to put it on the agenda, I think many of the people in this room deserve a round of applause for it, but we'll do that later. But it is the people in this room who have done that, and well done to all of you. Secondly then, for the next phase, for post-2020, and I want to support very much the comments you have both made about that. It seems to me, though, that we need to be careful of dismissing the intersectionality between anti-Gypsyism on one hand and marginalization on the other hand. You're absolutely right that social policies have failed, but they have failed and economic policy and cultural policy, but they have failed in no small way because they are also anti-Gypsyism policies. You know. So we have got to make sure, particularly remembering the Sustainable Development Goals, that we don't forget those who are furthest behind, while acknowledging that everybody can experience anti-Gypsyism. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more statement or question. Roxana.
Hello everybody, my name is Roxana Witt. I'm the head of the educational department of the German Central Council of Sinti and Roma, and I wanted to go back to your question, like you asked particularly, what can we actually do against what was mentioned by my colleague Jelena right there, to fight anti-Gypsyism, and what has been shown to be effective, especially in the context of online hate crimes and hate speech. I can only bring another example to the table, that I think the main point of fighting anti-Gypsyism, beside everything that was already mentioned, is to empower Sinti and Roma communities all over Europe, all over the world, and to change the narrative about Sinti and Roma people. If we are not changing the narrative of Sinti and Roma people being normal citizens like everybody else, and if we are not empowering Sinti and Roma people to act self-confidently in public and to raise awareness from them being great personalities, to be people of competencies, to be experts, nobody will acknowledge us as equal human beings ever. Because in the media, not only in social media, but also in broad-spread, widespread, common media, we are always portrayed in a stereotypical way. We have to change the narrative on the first hand about us. We have to empower Sinti and Roma people to speak for themselves and about themselves. And the next thing is we have to change the focus of the targeted problematic group. Because right now, we are always talking about stereotypes, 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 and this also reproduces the view on Sinti and Roma people as being the problematic group. But as it was mentioned already, we are not, but the problematic group is definitely lying somewhere in the majority, where it's the kernel of anti-Gypsyism. Thank you.
I want to thank you very much. Here you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would just like to say thank you very much, and thank you, Anastasia, for pointing out the racist policies. And we should review even the policies, targeted policies for Roma, because some of them are very racist themselves, those for Roma. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the coffee break, I quickly have to say, working group number 1 is going to be here. Working group number 2 is going to be up there. And there's been a change in working group number 1, because unfortunately Julia Moser, who was moderating that, has fallen ill. But Dan Doggy has been so kind to take her place. And he will be a stern but with justice run the working group. Now, please go have coffee, talk, exchange, and be happy.
When do we meet?
So we meet in about 45 minutes. 15 minutes, yes. Well, we're supposed to start at 11, so I'll give you 5 minutes extra, 5 past 11.